this is more my opinion about the HR profession. And I think HR has a brand issue. I think that what we end up doing as practitioners, or how we're perceived, I think lets us down in terms of what we can do to add value and how we demonstrate what we can do to make businesses better. I think that there's a lot of focus and there's a lot of practice which is focused on policies and rules and checking things and policing, and I think that it misses the point of what we can do, which is about getting that balance right between our people that we employ and getting the best success for the business. I think that there's this huge swell of anti-HR rhetoric in the press. I think that is based on, kind of this belief that HR are trying to push businesses in a certain direction, which is anti-business and anti-commercial. And I think that is not how we should try and position ourselves as practitioners and professionals. I think it's about how do we really demonstrate how we can get the best out of the people who work in organizations. And you don't do that by expecting people to all respond in the same way to things, or to follow a set of rules, or to expect that the same things are going to motivate people. You do that by understanding your people and talking to them and treating them like people. So I don't think this is about a load of navel gazing about what we should be called, should it be HR, should it be personnel? I mean, I think there was an argument some years ago about we should revert to personnel because that's about people, and you call it human resources, you're talking about resources. And I think all that is not helpful in terms of establishing us as a brand and how we can really reposition our the influence and the roles that we play in organizations to get the best out of people. I think that the way that you end up in these ER issues and the way you end up in these situations is by having this expectation that people are going to behave in a certain way, which is generally going to be unhelpful or difficult. And so you treat them expecting them to behave like that way. So you're legislating for poor performance rather than encouraging and implementing processes to create great performance. And you work in synergy with your organization to make sure that everyone is pulling in the same direction to achieve the best results. And the best results are you as an individual and your organization moving into that direction. I think that that's the issue that we face as a profession, that it's this perception of who we are and what we do. And I see it in my own organization, I see it in every organization that, HR in the room, watch what you say, all this kind of, that commentary, I think just gets in the way. And I think HR people get in the way in, the very processes and procedures, and you must fill in this form and you've got to do, all this sort of stuff that just gets in the way of actually being able to work together to achieve the best outcome.
Makes a lot of sense. I think certainly I hear that as well. Obviously, talking to a lot of HR practitioners, a lot feel that the perception of them is not necessarily in line with how they see themselves, if that makes sense, and how they see the profession and what's changing and things like that. Perry, when we talked about the future of HR, it kind of links in a little bit to what you talked about there, because you talked about having a seat at the table and the position of HR being elevated, and as a sort of direct result of the pandemic and the situation where those organizations that have handled that well, and those HR departments and things. Do you see this sort of rebrand sort of HR? Do you see it happening at the moment?
I would never have said seat at the table because I hate that. But Sorry. What I would have said is, no, don't worry. But what I would have said is how people viewed us in adding value to the business changed significantly, and that doesn't change at all. I've often said, don't get a seat at the top table, go and sit in the canteen and find out what real people want. That's how I used to describe it. But anyway, so I wasn't pulling you up on that one. So I got involved in a LinkedIn spat because somebody tried to blame the Great Resignation in totality on HR. I'm like, what? Really? So he wouldn't budge, but it just shows you sometimes how deeply ingrained the stuff that George has been talking about is towards HR, perhaps without any realization of some of the most significant shifts that I've seen in the profession over the last sort of 4 or 5 plus years. You know, people like Tom will talk it into existence, and people go, actually, that's how I want to be, and that's what I will do. So I've seen more aspiration. I've seen the CIPD push the business savvy agenda, and I think that got people to start stepping into a little bit more about, actually, yeah, I don't really know enough about the products, the services, the market, the environment that we're operating in. So I often say that if you know, an HR professional doesn't know that, they're just coasting along in a mediocre sense, and they'll never add the value they could do. But I see much more agitation, and I actually see quite the opposite. I see HR people knocking on the doors of leaders going, are you going to do this strategic workforce planning then? Because otherwise I'm just going to keep recruiting people on this treadmill, and that's never a way to be, because you're going to drain money, you're going to kill morale. So I see us being a bit more agitative, and I think that's a good thing, because I then see business response to that being, actually, I've got to tackle that, haven't I? It isn't just about P&L or, you know, supply chain. It actually is about what are we doing to look after people, and social mobility and inclusion. And I think some of what hits people with this is where, you know, voices, people have stood up and said, organisation, what are you doing about me too? Because it matters to me. So I want to know what's going on there, and so on. There was a beautiful bot on Twitter yesterday that was calling out gender pay gap differentiation for every company promoting International Women's Day, and some of it was staggeringly big, and it's like, whoa, you are just playing a really false game. So I think HR's got this opportunity, I think, to step into those and go, this is damaging for us, this is dangerous for us, I've been telling you about this for ages, let's work on it together, and let's make the difference that people need us to, in order to sustain our performance and everything George has said. So it has